In this presentation, I will demonstrate how to take an ERwin model from ERwin Data Modeler and migrate the metadata over to Informatica PowerCenter as part of either the source or the destination of an ETL process. As a first step, I'm going to open up the ERwin model. Here we see a standard snowflake type dimensional model. You can see the dimensional characteristics defined here. In addition, you can note that there's a great deal of information defined within this model, both logical and physical, although this is a dimensional only model. In fact, we have information related to the data types, of course the comments and definitions associated with it, and even user-defined properties for the elements. Let's look at the table side. You'll see the same thing, including user-defined properties, in this case, Stuart, John. Now, I'm going to take this model and export it out to an XML file which is usable by Informatica. In this case, I'm going to use the meta integration export capability to an external format. And note we can specify parameters about the source, which of course is this model itself, and how the information comes in. For each of these, you can note that as I click through these, you'll see that the tooltips change so you can understand exactly what is happening based on how you set these particular parameters. In addition, for the destination side, we have the selection of the actual format that we want to export to. In this case, it's Informatica PowerCenter. I select a file that I want to export to. In this case, it's in my temporary directory. I also specify whether or not I'm going to look at the target or source side of the particular mapping. So am I going to populate these as targets, or am I going to populate these as sources? In this case, this dimensional model is going to be my target. In addition, note I specify a database name as it points out down here. It is for grouping all the target tables under one particular name. So those are the options. There are many others, obviously, and again, as you click through them, the definition of what they mean and how they're used is presented down here in the tooltips. And of course, there is also the tooltip for the entire bridge, as you can see when I select the bridge. And it even explains a lot of information about how to create, for example, XML files, etc. So what to do with these files that you have. Anyway, I'm going to click Finish, which will then cause the bridge to save the file out as an XML file in ERwin format. It'll parse that file, and then it will translate it into a different XML format, this one for Informatica PowerCenter. Note we've completed successfully. A couple warnings of no significance in this case. So now I'm going to go to Informatica PowerCenter. First thing I'm going to do is create a new folder. Call it ERwin Test, and that is a place to put the metadata that I import from that XML file. So I select Repository Import Objects. I pick the specific file that I created and specified when I was executing the bridge from ERwin. Click Next. Now I select all of these tables. Note again, we have all the tables that were in the original ERwin file available here in our list of available target tables. So I simply say Add All, Next. I specify the folder I just created as the target, or excuse me, the target, but certainly the place where I'm going to put the metadata. And it will all be target tables. So next, next, and next. So now it's validating and importing the information that's in that XML file. It's finished. So now what we should see, in fact, is all that information that we just brought in. Note we have all these different tables that are all brought in excuse me, let's go to the proper one. All the particular tables that are brought in the case of ERwin test. Note, for example, we have the assignment table. You can see all the information brought across, including comments. Business name would be logical name if there was one in that particular model. In that case, it was a dimensional-only model. Of course, the data types, etc., primary foreign key information, all of that is available here from the model. In fact, we can go to Designer now. And taking a look at what is actually in ERwin test, we'll see that there are targets. If you, for example, use the target designer, let's look at the assignment table here. In the assignment table, you can see again, we brought across the description information, of course, database type information, all of the columns, including data types, etc., primary foreign key information, as I mentioned. But in addition, even what are referred to as metadata extensions. In Informatica, those are very similar to the user-defined property concept in ERwin. And in the case of ERwin, we had Stewart as a user-defined property with John in there, if you recall. Over here, we go to assignment again, look at table information, and John is the steward. Well, we also see that same information now in Informatica Designer when we're looking at the target design. Okay, now that's bringing targets into a particular system. Now we're going to look at the same process for populating the source side. I'm again going to open a model. This time I'm going to start with a fully relational and actually normalized model, which represents staging database for your warehouse. Note this is not a Snowflake, and also it's a logical and physical model. In this case, note physical names are in fact different from logical names, mostly by spaces, that sort of thing, sometimes longer words. Again, we have all the usual information for these particular elements. I can look at assignment again. If I look at the entity properties, I'll see definitions. If I look at the attribute properties, I will again see data types and, of course, definition information. So I'm going to again export this particular file out to Informatica. It doesn't think the file's saved, so I will save it and I will export. Okay, again, you can specify particular parameters about how this file, this particular metadata from the model is read. And also the destination, again, we specify Informatica PowerCenter. We specify a particular file. I'm going to call it paper staging. This time it is the source. So I specify tables as sources. And as the database name, I'm going to rename it as well. And we're ready. So again, click Finish. It saves the file out to ERwin XML format. It then parses that file and creates an Informatica file from it. Everything is successful, so we go to Informatica, and again, we're going to import the particular objects that I just exported from ERwin into Informatica format. So let me select that file. Remember, it was the paper staging file. Again, it has a list of tables that I can bring in as sources, so I add them all. For the destination folder, I'm going to place them in the same folder within Informatica repository. And again, simply select Next. There are no resolutions to be made. And again, it parses, validates, and then imports and populates in the repository the source tables from that staging data warehouse model that we had in ERwin. Okay, we're done. So now when we look at this particular table, we should see that there are targets and sources. Unfortunately, it's not showing them here, but let's go to Designer for that particular example. And in this case, we do have sources and targets, just needed to update the repository, obviously. Note my workspace that I was at before is right here. Now, what I'm going to do, in fact, is I'm going to create a mapping now based on the fact that I have sources and targets. So I can go to my mapping designer, and I can bring in my sources. So, for example, I have this entire table. Let's say, for example, I bring in the assignment table. Okay? And for Informatica, it actually creates, for example, the SQ statement along with the connection into the source database using the information that was provided by ERwin, and including, for example, the fact that it's the DBO schema, etc. Then I'm going to bring my target in here, and I will simply be able to map from source to target the particular data elements one by one, or you, of course, use the wonderful features of Informatica to do that sort of work. But basically, that's all there is. I have now brought sources, I've brought targets, I have full definitions of what these mean. I also have, for example, dimensional characteristics, etc., all as metadata extensions of the particular element. So we have a huge amount of information here. Logical information, physical information, definitional information, data type information, and of course user-defined properties, all brought into Informatica, all available to the Informatica developer when they're trying to lay out, map, etc., define processes, all that kind of information.